Hansen, Montrose County Commissioner. I'm here with Senator Cleave Simpson, Senate District 5 and
Senate District 6.
Senate District 6, my mistake, which encompasses a small portion of Montrose County but goes on south to Alamosa, correct?
Correct, yep.
We're here at the JOLT conference. The senator came up to listen to what the speakers we had to talk about for energy. And I just want to get your impression of what you've heard so far, or and how it squares with your thoughts about energy and kind of what you think so far.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. It's been really informative and interesting session. I have a little bit of a bias. I graduated from the Colorado School of Mines with an engineering degree, a mining engineer. So I spent about 20 years working in the energy industry and surface coal mines in Texas and Australia. And we were delivering coal to power plants to generate electricity, and most of the time I was in Texas. So, and it's really remarkable what that affordable electricity meant in that part of the United States. You know, people where it gets hot and humid, and trying to get air conditioning to folks was really imperative, and really what helped drive the Texas economy back in the 80s and 90s. So have a soft spot for coal and thermal coal for energy production, and I have friends and acquaintances that, you know, in Craig at the power plant, the Craig Electric Steam Station, and thinking about those communities and what's happening to them, and the whole concept of just transition, and some of the conversations today, and thinking about what energy needs and how we fill those needs going forward was really informative today.
Just kind of piggybacking off your thoughts and just the fact that you've had coal in your background, but you know, when you know, Moffat County and Montrose County, both Tier 1 coal impacted communities. So do you have any thoughts on how rapidly we're trying to ascend into this renewable, and is the goal attainable? I mean, you know, you listen to different professionals and experts talk about places like Germany who went all 100% renewable, and then they had to back off.
Come back.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it does feel like we're transitioning way faster than we're prepared to adapt to. It feels very forced. Every coal mine I worked at in Texas, which was about 7 of them, is now closed and abandoned and reclaimed, and it got replaced with cleaner, affordable natural gas. And it happened from consumer demand and market forces, not political will, which a lot of this today feels very just politically driven. And again, I have a really unique connection here in that I actually had an opportunity to come. I was living in Australia and trying to get back to the United States, and was about to come back and work at Nuclear, at the coal mine in Nuclear. Yeah, I got offered a job in late 2013, and after some careful thought, and it ended up probably being the right decision for my wife and I turned the job down. But because then they closed the mine, I don't know, 3 years after that. So again, a sensitivity for the communities here in the West End and all around Colorado that are dealing with this, you know, transition, and it feels a little, it doesn't feel like we're really prepared to make this transition.
It also seems a little ironic that you take something completely, and of course Tri-State is a private company, they can do whatever they want, but the policy drove a lot of that, right? And that's where the legislators step in, is that someone's belief in a policy that actually destroys a community, and then take the West End, just recovering now, it's taken a long time. That was 2016 when they closed, I believe. And they're nowhere near being recovering that property tax base. So it does seem that we could be smarter about how we do it, considering that, you know, countries like China and India are bringing on so much
regularly,
bringing coal plants online all the time. So we're taking everything offline. Our electricity eventually would go up. And one other thing that they talked about today, and I want to get your take on it, we listened to Roger Pilkey, and he mentioned the consumption of farmland in solar and wind, and the acreage it takes to adequately supply the right megawatts. Any thoughts on that? And you live in Alamosa. So
I live in Alamosa. I farm and ranch. I have an 800-acre irrigated farm, and was one of the sponsors a couple years ago to advance the conversation around agrivoltaics, about where it's the right place and the community wants it. Solar development that still incorporates some sort of productive agriculture. So it's not really clear yet what that is going to end up looking like, but during the last legislative session, there was a conversation about, the number of acres in Colorado needs to increase fivefold from solar perspective to meet our greenhouse gas reduction roadmap goals. So that means approximately about another 30 to 40,000 acres of solar across the state, and trying to think about how that unfolds, where it unfolds, where it makes sense, how are the communities involved, and can you do things smartly and thoughtfully about incorporating traditional ag practices in those developments. And I'd like to see more of those conversations and more outcomes like that.
So, and I mean, I'm sensitive to losing. If you put things on farmland, it may never go back to farmland.
Correct.
I think about that with development, with housing. Not every rancher wants to put agrivoltaics on their property. It's not the best use of energy space. It would appear, and I think something that hit me today is that if you put in one nuclear power plant, even if it was a small one, you wouldn't have to
displace thousands of acres.
Right.
Yeah.
So doesn't that make
The
more
footprint.
sense?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a frustrating kind of conversation at the Capitol in that space about there seems to be no appetite to even have conversations at the Capitol about how does nuclear fit in this, all of the above portfolio. And I worked for a company in Texas that was built at the time when I got there, was building 2 nuclear plants that have, came in online, I think in the 90s, and have been this reliable, steady source of base load energy for the system for decades with no incidents.
Right.
And we're just, not me personally, the
We as
General
the-
Assembly,
right.
we as the General Assembly is just reluctant to even take a step in that direction, even to include nuclear in the definition of clean energy last session. We can't get it out of
there.
We
And
can't even get it out of the committee.
And that's, it's sort of like how we demonized nuclear, the word nuclear in the 60s, 70s. We had a lot of protesters about it, right? And now it's starting to be, you got Bill Gates doing something in Wyoming. It's becoming a little bit, but Colorado doesn't seem to be a leader in that realm.
We can't seem to take that step, which
Yeah.
is a little frustrating. Again,
No,
I've been
no,
there.
no, no.
I've
Little
been
scary.
in the General Assembly 4 years, and I think every year there's a bill just to make a little bit of a dent, a crack. Can we study the feasibility? And there's like no appetite from the General Assembly, the majority party.
Right.
Just right now isn't interested in even having that conversation
Is that
at
an
all.
education issue? Or
I
is
think it is.
So yeah, that.
I very much think it is. There are enough, real world examples. France, for instance, has figured this out.
They have.
Like, why is Colorado in particular lagging in this conversation and this piece? And
you would think France is just laughing at us, going, they're still.
We routinely, Colorado's leading the cutting edge in so many different things. Why is this one create such a barrier? And it's probably education and just perceptions about, it's just this dangerous, scary thing that's hard to overcome.
Yep. I think that as we, sort of the part of the purpose of JOLT is to bring those together. We had one Democrat House rep here that is willing to listen and hear, and hopefully that'll start small changes. But I think we have to start dispelling the myth that nuclear is the big bad thing. We have a whole community over in the west end of Montrose County that they're chomping at the bit, would love it. They're looking at uranium mining again, vanadium. We have to be smarter, and when we think about our smart watches and our smartphones, and they're all laden with rare earth minerals.
Exactly.
And so we'd rather, this is the duplicitous part that bothers me, is that we're more willing to let other countries mine that at great risk, because they don't have the EPA standards and all the regulations that we have. And then we sit there and watch our phones and
Oh, I know that you're preaching to the choir. As a mining engineer, I'm like very sensitive to those conversations as well, to watch what's happened to the mining industry in Colorado, both the hard rock and the coal and the uranium, and go, we just have to be more thoughtful.
Right.
There's a path forward where responsible mining activity can produce the products that we need if we're going to transition into this much cleaner society and green energy. It takes somewhere, somebody's digging a hole in the ground
Somewhere.
to produce
Right.
lithium,
Yep.
to produce copper, to produce titanium. There's a whole laundry list of things that
Sure.
have to be mined and processed
Yeah,
to
it's
create
true.
this environment we want.
And we could be here like for half an hour because, in the West End, they just found a new mineral that they named okiite. And I asked, what is it for? And they're like, the purposes are yet to be determined. I mean, this has to be studied and researched, but they did find a new element. And to me, that's fascinating. So,
Yeah.
so this is a really good way to wrap it up. I mean, I think that at least what JOLT's trying to do is achieve a meeting of the minds and trying to educate people on what real energy is and how we can make a bigger impact as we get more and more people here. Do we really want to be, laden with solar and wind, or do we want to be smart and invest in one, a nuclear facility?
Yeah. Well, I commend you and Jolt for taking this on. I recognize this is only the second kind of conference of this space, but you can see it's very well attended. And I made the drive up here. Well, I made it from Burlington yesterday, but from Alamosa to Burlington to here, because I know how important this conversation is and trying to get folks involved. And it's good to see at least a handful of legislators here interested and engaged about what do the policies look like going forward that kind of set the stage for us.
So if we can help in any way, and we appreciate your philosophy and your perspective, and thank you for joining me for this little snippet of information about the JOLT and mining and all our opinions.
Yeah. Thanks, Commissioner. It was a pleasure
you.
to be here.
All right.
Thanks.